Okay, in this last section, we will talk about inflammation and fever. Fever is an abnormally high body temperature, and our body temperature is controlled by the brain in a region called the hypothalamus. So we want to remember hypothalamus. And any substance that causes fever is called a pyrogen. And pyrogens affect the hypothalamus and set basically the thermostat that your brain thinks that your body temperature to be at a higher temperature. So if the thermostat is set at a higher temperature, if your normal body temperature is 37 and all of a sudden your hypothalamus says, wait, that's too low, we need a new temperature of 39, how would you feel, right? How would you feel? You would feel cold because your brain is telling your body that we should actually be at a higher temperature. So when you feel cold, you're going to have the chills, you're going to grab their blankets, right? You get those basically the symptoms of chill in that fever. And as a pyrogen concentrations decrease, then the body's thermostat goes back to normal. So you were at a really high temperature, now you're back to normal. And how does your body feel now? You're going to feel really hot, right? So that you're going to get flushed, you're going to sweat, you're going to just feel really uncomfortable and hot as your body temperature comes back down. So you're going to try and cool down. Inflammation is a process that we talked about before, so we don't really have to go into as much detail, but we all know that we're going to release our vasodilating our chemicals, right? Histamine, I was going to say cytokines, right? And we already know that we're going to increase vascular permeability. We're going to get those fluids, proteins, and also phagocytes leaving the bloodstream and entering into the tissues. What happens is that you get the symptoms of inflammation are all due to this response. So inflammation is associated with pain. Oh, sorry. Let's start here. Swelling is part of inflammation, reddening, right? This is all due to the fact that there's more blood going to that area. There's fluid exiting the bloodstream and going into the tissues. Then that increased blood flow will also make you feel warm. And because there's nerves present in your body, that extra sort of pressure on the nerves due to that inflammation and extra fluid is going to cause pain or some kind of tissue interruption, right? So it'll stimulate pain receptors. All right. So there's a couple kinds of inflammation. There's acute and chronic. Acute inflammation is good, right? So inflammation is good because it does attract your neutrophils, your phagocytes into the tissues. If it's an allergic inflammation, it's mediated by eosinophils and mast cells and basophils, actually. It's going to activate all kinds of chemical mediators, and you get a rash, you get pus, you get an abscess. In chronic inflammation, it's mediated by other kinds of cells, macrophages and lymphocytes, or T cells and B cells. The chemical mediators are going to come from these two cells, and then you're going to get rash, fibrosis, or granuloma. So fibrosis and granuloma, this is where the tissues will start to get hard and wall off the infection. Your body's trying to attempt to contain the infection by creating basically a really hard wall around them, which is fibrosis. And also the granuloma is a circular structure that walls off the bacteria. So here's their chronic inflammation. It's basically just a low-level battle for a longer time. And chronic inflammation, it can lead to many kinds of disease states. Inflammation can also be involved in things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, heart disease, and cancer. So here's our advantages and risks. Acute inflammation, it's good because we have that increased blood flow, and we can get, it can dilute the toxins and dilute the bacterial products that might be there. And then those 5 signs of inflammation, I just wanted to spell them out for you, right? Erythema is redness, edema is swelling, heat, pain, and altered function. The Latin is fun because it rhymes: calor, dolor, rubor, tumor, and functio laesa. So calor is the heat, pain, redness, swelling, and then this is the altered function. Chronic inflammation, prolonged low level inflammation destroys healthy tissue. Just if you have chronic inflammation, the tissue that is constantly inflamed will start to become damaged, like the healthy cells will become damaged. So chronic inflammation is very bad for your body. It can cause tissue damage from the viral infections. Hepatitis C is one of these. It can lead to liver cirrhosis, and that can lead to liver failure. And then granulomas can be formed from chronic inflammation. These are pockets of infected tissue. They're walled off by white blood cells and sometimes fibrous tissue. And basically, they're constantly trying to get rid of the pathogen, but the pathogen's always there in a low level. Here's an image of a granuloma. So you can see how I have fibroblasts. So this is going to be just like connective tissue that walls off the inflammation. We have our macrophages and our dendritic cells, the lymphocytes in blue, macrophages in pink. And then we have the mycobacteria, the one that causes tuberculosis, also active inside these guys. So this is what a granuloma looks like. And then when you look at a X-ray, right, the X-rays can show those granulomas on the X-ray. So, so chronic inflammation, being like having pro-inflammatory cytokines or pro-inflammatory microbiome can actually hurt your tissues over time. And if you wanted to sort of counteract any of that, right, there is a anti-inflammatory diet, which is basically all the foods you think are good for you. Those are the goods that are going to help with inflammation. And then these foods are considered pro-inflammatory. So if you have cancer in the family or some like Crohn's disease or any autoimmune disease, you want to make sure that you're following a low or an anti-inflammatory diet. All right, fever. I already talked about fever. I realized that slide was a little bit too soon, but we have the same thing, right? We have increase in body temperatures and pyrogens, a little bit extra pyrogens, right? The things that cause your brain to reset can be exogenous. They can be from so exogenous means outside the body. They can be virus or bacterial or toxins, or pyrogens can be endogenous. So that's from our own immune system. So cytokines that are released by our immune system can actually cause fever, which is why you might feel feverish after a vaccination. It shows you that your white blood cells are working to produce an immune response. So I already told you why you would feel hot and cold. So there's that question. And then just a picture on where the hypothalamus is. It's this region in the brain. And the chemicals that are found in your body, those pyrogens, right? They are going to travel through the bloodstream, alert the brain. The brain's going to send messages down and basically reset that thermostat where you feel cold, shivering, you have a higher metabolic rate, you're not sweating, you have vasoconstriction. This is all what happens when you feel cold. And so it'll try and get your body temperature up to that new set point. So fever is actually found in many animals. It is thought to inhibit temperature-sensitive bacteria from dividing. So mesophiles sometimes don't like that extra couple of degrees in temperature. It enhances our own immune system by stimulating the white blood cells to kill, increases the metabolism of our immune cells. And what fever does is it reduces some nutrients available for microbes. So especially iron, it tells our body to stop circulating iron in the body. And then these are just some animals that I found that can also have fever. All right, so we're done with the lecture. Just some questions. What do the granules released by NK cells contain? So they're going to contain granzymes and perforin. What molecules cause fever? That's going to be your pyrogen. Which of the following is most active during an allergic response? That's going to be your basophils. And a PAMP is going to be a portion of a pathogen that elicits a nonspecific immune response. And which nonspecific immune cell is found in your skin and mucous membranes? And that's going to be dendritic cell. The attraction and movement of phagocytes to microorganisms is called chemotaxis. just think about a taxi, right? If you take a taxi from here to there, you're going to move depending on the chemical that is around. And after ingestion, what is the next step in phagocytosis? And that is your phagosome. And that's it.